The success of this work is really in the magic that happens when people take on a difficult project, when a landowner and a conservation organization work something out, when a group of people figure out how to get a project permitted. I'm Gus Seelig. I'm the director for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and I work with folks all over the state of Vermont who are helping to strengthen our communities and our economy by building housing and conserving farms and helping support public access to our working landscape.
So when I used to lease the farm in Pownell, it was really difficult to look at the long term, and now that I own the farm in Shaftesbury, I can really grow my business and I can really make plans for the long term, which is really crucial in agriculture. I'm Lisa McDougall and I own Mighty Food Farm. I got into agriculture at UMass Amherst when I was going to school there. I was undeclared, and for a summer job I got a job at the Hampshire College Farm, which is a small vegetable CSA, and totally fell in love and switched my major over to plant, soil, and insect sciences. I started down in Pownell. I was leasing a farm down there for 10 years, and I've been looking for land for about 5 since about 2011, which was really difficult. Land's pretty expensive.
You know, the farm economy continues to have challenges. Dairy is still the biggest part of our economy, but there's also vibrancy in the farm economy, in value-added products, in diversification, where you see lots of young people getting involved in agriculture. One of the big things that our partners at the Vermont Land Trust have done that I think has been vitally important is to create a farmland access program.
This property was originally owned by Owen and Kathy Bouchane, and they had been trying to sell it for a couple of years. The Vermont Land Trust put the property for sale on their farmland access program for farmers like myself. I went through the application process, and once I was accepted, I then had to get my financing in place through FSA and VITA. For the development rights of the property, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board helped out with a very significant portion of the farm. It's just been pretty invigorating, actually, to have a piece of land that I can really take care of and call my own, and sounds cliche, but put roots down, have solid infrastructure, and really look towards the future. A lot of possibilities opened up for me.
I lived in an apartment, a very small townhousey kind of apartment with it was sort of marketed as 3 bedrooms, but it was more like 2 bedrooms and a walk-in closet. And it was for myself and a boy and a girl, so they had to each have their own room, or I preferred that they have their own room, and they were adolescents at the time. When I moved into that apartment was that it was going to be a temporary situation, but what I learned as I lived there longer was that I couldn't afford to move once I got in there. So my income was limited. And I was looking around and learned about what was then Central Vermont Community Land Trust, which is now Downstreet. I've basically signed a contract with Downstreet that we share the equity of the house, so I wouldn't get what like a homeowner who owned it solely by themselves would get in equity. I'm sharing that equity with Downstreet. It keeps the cost of the property low for the next buyer.
It's one more step on what we call a ladder of tenure in housing, and makes a contribution, helps people get into home ownership who never would have. They then become parts of their communities. Some people stay for many, many years, and other people move on.
What I see in our work is that our domestic violence shelters have become like longer term housing, and there's a bottleneck because the victims that come in need of housing have no place to go. They can't afford it, they can't find it.
Our goals are both to house the vulnerable and to also provide housing for our workforce. And I think one of the things we've learned over the years is how to better and better combine housing with services for the most vulnerable Vermonters.
They gave me a house, but it created a home for me. It created a community and a neighborhood and that sense of belonging and rootedness that I love. And I love that about Vermont.
The Birdseye Wildlife Management Area was a big project we undertook with Vermont Housing Conservation Board to expand one of our wildlife management areas by about 3,000 acres. It was the largest state acquisition of land in Vermont in about a decade and a half. Acres and acres and acres of terrific wildlife habitat, and really representative of all the species that live in that part of the state.
I've been on this area since 1974, and there are places I have not been. I'm Justin Lindholm. I bought the cliffs of Birdseye in 1974, and I've been in love with this area ever since. And I'm recently retired from the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Board after a 6-year term. I just like to get people out to see what's beautiful that we have in this country and this state. There's so much out here in the wild that is fascinating.
Bird watching, photography, hunting, fishing, trapping, all of those are a crucial part both of our mission and another reason we buy land and we hold easements on land. It's a just under $3.5 million project. VHCB put in about $600,000 to that. But the really crucial thing was that early foundational money that kind of set us on the road to being able to do that.
I'm so happy, and I feel so relaxed now that we have preserved one very important piece of land. And it's not just for Vermont, it's for anybody.
We spend a lot of money and a lot of effort to do it. And we do it because people want to have an area that they can know wildlife's going to be there and that they know they can go and experience wildlife, however they interact with wildlife, whether that's with a camera or whether it's hunting.
100 years from now, nobody will care who saved it, but they're going to be really happy it was saved.
The impact of the Vermont Housing Conservation Board has been huge, and we're supportive of every aspect of the Housing and Conservation Board, both affordable housing and land conservation. And the origins of that were, it really was a brilliant strategy to marry these two interests.
All the things about the real estate market were making Vermont less affordable, reducing public access to the landscape, were causing farmers trouble in acquiring land and in cash flowing as the dairy economy was struggling. So all those things really made us say, we've got a problem in common.
Projects like that the Vermont Housing Conservation Board has funded are crucial for small or medium or large agricultural businesses.
I could not own a house if I hadn't gotten that grant.